Lily and Lana Hartman were the perfect twins, admired by their town, praised by their teachers, and trusted by everyone who knew them, until the night two children vanished and the darkness behind their identical smiles was finally revealed. Riverside Heights was the kind of town people moved to when they wanted peace. It was small, quiet, and safe, a place where everyone knew everyone else. Rows of identical white fences bordered the sidewalks, and every Saturday morning smelled like fresh coffee and cut grass. The streets were lined with maple trees that turned the entire town gold every autumn, and at the heart of it all stood the Hartman family home, a two-story brick house with blue shutters and a wide front porch. The Hartmans were known and loved by almost everyone. David Hartman was a local contractor who often helped fix broken fences without charging a dime. His wife, Margaret, was the kind of woman who remembered every birthday on the street. But what really made the family memorable were their twin daughters, Lily and Lana. Born only a few minutes apart, they looked identical in every possible way. Same dark hair, same gray-blue eyes, same calm smiles that could charm anyone they met. To outsiders, the twins seemed perfect. They were polite, always got good grades, and volunteered at the community center. Yet those who knew them best sensed something strange. Their bond was unusually intense. They spoke in short, cryptic phrases that only they understood. They dressed alike, moved alike, and even finished each other's sentences. Teachers sometimes joked that one could sit an exam for the other and no one would ever notice. As they grew older, their connection became something darker. They rarely made friends and preferred to spend time alone, reading crime novels or watching documentaries about serial killers and missing person cases. They would whisper to each other and giggle at things no one else found funny. Their parents dismissed it as a phase, twin girls simply being inseparable. But behind their matching smiles was a secret fascination with control, death, and how easily people could be deceived. That autumn, Riverside Heights was preparing for its annual Halloween fair, one of the biggest events of the year. Families decorated their porches with carved pumpkins and orange lights. Children practiced their costumes weeks in advance. The Hartman twins, now 19, helped organize the event, managing the ticket booth and decorating the haunted maze. They seemed more involved than ever, cheerful and helpful, blending perfectly into the excitement around them. No one noticed how closely they watched the younger children, how they lingered near the maze long after closing, or how they whispered to each other when no one else was near. There was something behind their eyes that night, a quiet thrill that no one could read. 3 days later, Riverside Heights woke up to panic. Two children who had been at the fair, 8-year-old Ben Miller and 10-year-old Grace Nolan, were missing. Police cars filled the streets, search parties spread through the woods, and the once peaceful town became a place of fear. The Hartman twins joined the search with the same calm expressions they always wore, walking hand in hand as if the tragedy didn't touch them at all. Nobody knew then that behind their steady eyes lay the beginning of something far more horrifying than anyone in Riverside Heights could imagine. The disappearance of Ben Miller and Grace Nolan shook Riverside Heights like a storm tearing through a quiet valley. It began as confusion, then disbelief, and finally, terror. The two children had last been seen at the Halloween fair, walking together toward the parking lot after sunset. Their parents assumed they had gone to play with friends nearby, but when hours passed and the kids didn't come home, panic set in. By morning, the entire town knew something was terribly wrong. The police began their investigation immediately. They combed the fairgrounds, checked every booth, and interviewed dozens of people. Volunteers spread out through the woods with flashlights, calling the children's names into the night. The riverbanks were searched, and the playgrounds were emptied. The longer the search continued without answers, the more fear settled into every household in Riverside Heights. Parents began keeping their children indoors. The fairgrounds, once filled with laughter, stood silent and empty under the fading autumn lights. Amid the chaos, Lily and Lana Hartman stood out for their calmness. They moved through the search areas with quiet focus, comforting crying parents, handing out flyers, and volunteering for every shift. To anyone watching, they looked like two dedicated young women doing their best to help. Yet, to Detective Evelyn Cross, something about them didn't feel right. It wasn't anything they said or did. It was the way they mirrored each other. Every movement, the way they spoke in the same tone, and how their eyes never showed grief or fear. When the police asked where they had been on the night the children disappeared, both twins gave the same answer, word for word. They claimed they were cleaning up the haunted maze until late, then went straight home. Their story matched perfectly. Too perfectly. Detective Cross noted it in her report, but didn't have enough evidence to question them further. Still, something about their unshakable composure left her unsettled. 3 days later, a park ranger found the first real clue. Near the edge of the river, hidden under a pile of damp leaves, was a small blue backpack. Inside were the missing children's phones, candy wrappers, and a broken flashlight. The discovery reignited the search, and police dogs were brought in to follow the scent. The trail led through the woods and stopped abruptly near the back fence of the Hartman property. When officers knocked on the twins' door, their mother invited them in without hesitation. The girls stood together in the kitchen, quiet and polite as usual. They allowed the police to search the yard, but nothing unusual was found. Still, Detective Cross couldn't shake the feeling that the answers lay behind those identical faces. Days turned into weeks, and the case began to lose momentum. Rumors spread quickly through Riverside Heights. Some blamed strangers passing through town, while others whispered that someone local was responsible. A few mentioned the twins, but the idea was dismissed as cruel gossip. After all, the Hartman girls were model citizens, kind, helpful, and gentle. Yet beneath their calm exterior, a secret was starting to rot. Each night, they watched the news coverage with quiet smiles, their hands always close, fingers brushing as if sharing an invisible signal. The town believed the children were lost somewhere in the woods, but the truth was much closer. The twins had hidden it too well, and no one could yet see that the trail of the missing children ended where the sisters' darkness began. The first cold winds of November swept through Riverside Heights, carrying with them a heavy stillness that made the town feel smaller. The missing children's faces were still taped to every lamppost, their smiles fading under rain and time. Search efforts had slowed. The community was exhausted. Hope had begun to drain away, leaving behind only questions and uneasy silence. Detective Evelyn Cross refused to let the case die. Something inside her whispered that she was missing something important, something hiding in plain sight. She went over every report, every witness statement, and every timeline again. The one detail that continued to trouble her was how close the last set of footprints had come to the Hartman property. It wasn't enough for a warrant, but it was enough for suspicion. While most of the town tried to move on, the Hartman twins carried on as if nothing had changed. They attended college classes, smiled at neighbors, and joined the Sunday cleanup crew at the local park. Yet those who looked closely noticed small changes. They seemed more distant, quieter than usual. Sometimes one of them would pause mid-sentence, staring into space before suddenly smiling again. People chalked it up to stress. No one guessed that their minds were tangled in a dark secret they couldn't fully control. Then, one gray morning, a neighbor named Mrs. Collins called the police. She told them there was a strange odor drifting from the Hartman storm cellar. It had started faint, but was growing stronger by the day. Assuming it was a dead animal, 2 officers arrived to check. The twins stood on the porch, side by side, their faces calm but their eyes watchful as the officers went around to the back of the house. The moment the cellar door was pried open, a wave of rot and damp air rushed out. The flashlight beams sliced through the darkness, revealing a narrow staircase that led to a small room beneath the foundation. The walls were lined with soundproof padding, old blankets, and pieces of wood. The floor was stained with something dark that had soaked deep into the concrete. In one corner lay a metal box. Inside were the missing children's belongings, a charm bracelet, a toy car, and one small pink shoe. There was no doubt now. The case had come home. The Hartman twins were taken into custody while the property was sealed off for forensic investigation. The entire town gathered outside the police station that evening, whispering in disbelief. The image of the polite, smiling girls from the blue-shuttered house shattered completely. During questioning, the twins sat next to each other, motionless and expressionless. They answered calmly, denying everything, never turning on one another, never showing fear. But the evidence kept building. Fingerprints, DNA, fibers, everything pointed back to them. When their parents were told, their mother wept until she could barely speak. Their father simply stared at the floor, refusing to believe it. The house that had once been a symbol of kindness now stood as the darkest place in Riverside Heights. Detective Cross stayed late into the night, reviewing every piece of evidence, trying to understand how two young women so admired by everyone could have done something so monstrous. She did not yet know that this discovery was only the beginning, that beneath the horror of what had been found in the cellar lay an even deeper plan, carefully constructed and hidden behind the twins' identical faces. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling picture of premeditation began to emerge. The Hartman twins had not acted on impulse. Every move, every detail had been carefully thought out, studied, and executed. Police discovered that in the months leading up to the Halloween fair, Lily and Lana had spent countless hours researching criminal cases, missing children reports, and methods for covering up crimes. Their laptops were filled with notes, timelines, and diagrams showing escape routes, hiding spots, and forensic countermeasures. They had planned not just the crime itself, but every step that followed. The victims had been chosen with cold calculation. Ben Miller and Grace Nolan were two children from families new to the town, with minimal connections to other residents. They were unpredictable, easy to find, and would not immediately trigger suspicion. The twins had studied their routines during school and the fair, noting the times when they would be most vulnerable. Every decision, from the location of the cellar to the items used to manipulate evidence, reflected a deliberate, methodical approach to avoiding detection. After the killings, their cover-up began. They meticulously cleaned the crime scene and disposed of anything that could directly link them to the children. To delay the discovery, they posted from the children's social media accounts, creating false narratives that made it appear they had run away voluntarily. The plan worked long enough to buy them time. Police initially followed leads that went nowhere, chasing strangers and random tips, while the twins maintained a public persona of helpful volunteers and grieving young women. The unraveling began when investigators reviewed security footage from near the fairgrounds. It captured the twins' car parked suspiciously close to the river, exactly where footprints had been found leading toward the Hartman property. Forensic analysis connected the items recovered in the cellar directly to Lily and Lana. Their fingerprints were on the toy car and candy wrappers. Strands of hair were found in the duct tape used in the makeshift containment area. Each discovery added another layer of evidence, eroding the illusion of innocence the twins had maintained so skillfully. The breakthrough came when police recovered a deleted video from Lana's phone. For a brief 27 seconds, the screen showed the twins inside the cellar. They were laughing, holding objects belonging to Ben and Grace, speaking quietly to each other in tones that suggested amusement at the terror they had caused. It was the clearest proof that the Hartman twins were not only responsible for the children's deaths, but had done so with a deliberate sense of satisfaction. Every piece of evidence exposed the depths of the twins' planning and the extent of their obsession with control. It was no longer a case of a crime of opportunity. It was a carefully orchestrated act. The investigation revealed a calculated cruelty that shocked even seasoned detectives. Riverside Heights had never seen anything like it, and the community struggled to reconcile the polite, smiling girls they had once admired with the methodical killers behind closed doors. The realization was devastating. The twins had studied crimes for months, perfected their methods, and created a cover-up that initially fooled everyone. The children's deaths had been deliberate, and the cruelty of their planning left a scar on the town that would never fully heal. Even as evidence mounted and the law moved forward, the full weight of the twins' cold calculation hung over Riverside Heights like a shadow, darkening every street and every memory of the fair that had started it all. The trial of Lily and Lana Hartman gripped Riverside Heights in a way no other event had before. Courtrooms overflowed with townspeople, reporters, and curious outsiders, all desperate to see the young women who had once been the picture of perfection, now standing accused of something unthinkable. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensic reports, fingerprints, DNA matches, and the chilling video from Lana's phone that showed the twins in the cellar, holding the children's belongings and laughing. The prosecution painted a meticulous picture of premeditation. They detailed how the twins had studied criminal methods, selected the victims carefully, and executed the plan with cold efficiency. Every action after the killings, from posting false updates on social media to attempting to mislead police, was evidence of their calculated cruelty. Experts testified about the twins' psychological profiles, describing a shared obsession with control, manipulation, and a fascination with death that had grown over years. Despite the mounting evidence, the twins remained eerily composed. They sat side by side, expressionless, speaking only when necessary, their eyes meeting occasionally as if sharing some unspoken language. They showed no fear, no remorse, and no acknowledgement of the horror they had caused. To the jury and the spectators, it was unsettling. Two identical faces, two identical calmness, hiding a darkness no one could fathom. When the verdict was read, the courtroom fell silent. Both were found guilty of murder, guilty of every charge brought against them. The judge's words echoed in the heavy air, declaring the severity of their crimes and the consequences that would follow. The twins did not flinch, did not shed a tear. Some onlookers swore they saw a faint smile cross Lily's face, as if the sentence confirmed some private plan only she understood. Months passed, and life in Riverside Heights tried to move forward, though the scars remained. The Hartman house stood abandoned, a symbol of the town's collective shock. People avoided the streets near it, telling themselves that the past was best left behind. But inside the prison walls, the story continued. Guards noticed strange behavior from the twins. They spent hours tracing patterns on their cell walls, drawing intricate, intertwined circles that seemed to mirror their unbreakable bond. Then, one morning, the unimaginable happened. Lana was found unresponsive in her cell. The cause of death was ruled a suicide, leaving Lily alone with the twin she had relied on her entire life. After that day, Lily's demeanor changed. She became even quieter, spending hours staring at the wall, her finger tracing invisible circles as if still connected to Lana in some secret way. Prison counselors reported she refused to speak to anyone except her lawyer, and even then she remained distant, locked inside her own thoughts. In Riverside Heights, the story of the Hartman twins became a warning whispered among parents and children. The house was avoided, the fairgrounds remembered with unease, and the town carried the memory of the laughter from the cellar, a sound that refused to fade. The twins' bond, once admired as a symbol of unity, had become a symbol of darkness, a chilling reminder of how closely perfection and evil can sometimes coexist. The echoes of their actions, the meticulous planning, and the final tragedy lingered, ensuring that Riverside Heights would never again feel the innocence it once took for granted.